What could a glass of beer, a bowl of grain porridge, and an ancient city's accounting tablet possibly have in common? One answer is barley, a modest plant with a slender ear and an ordinary-looking grain. It is less famous than rice and less often treated as the symbol of a global staple than wheat. Yet during humanity's long transition toward cultivation, storage, and settled life, barley became an important companion. Why was this grain useful to early communities? How did it travel from fields to granaries, from malt houses to drinking vessels, and even into administrative records? Barley did not create civilization by itself. Its importance came from a particular set of traits that people learned to use. By following one grain through time, we can see how humans changed a plant and how that plant helped reshape human life. Turn the clock back roughly 10,000 years. Across the Fertile Crescent of Southwest Asia, communities were living through a long and uneven transformation. People gathered plants and hunted animals. Some groups were already staying longer in resource-rich places and managing wild cereals more deliberately. Wild barley was one of those cereals. Barley belongs to the grass family, alongside wheat and rice. Varieties differ, but barley as a crop can perform in relatively cool, dry, or short-season environments. For communities dependent on seasonal harvests, that flexibility made it a useful option when conditions were uncertain. Its mature grain could also be gathered, dried, and stored. Storage made it possible to carry part of one season's harvest into the future. But no single seed caused people to settle. Climate, local resources, population, technology, and social organization all mattered. Barley was valuable because it became one dependable element within that larger transformation. Every time people kept ears that were easier to harvest and planted their grain again, they selected barley. Barley changed under that selection. Agriculture was not invented in one sudden moment. It emerged through countless acts of gathering, saving, sowing, and learning. Why was barley worth saving? Part of the answer is inside the seed. Through photosynthesis, plants turn light energy into chemical energy. As barley forms grain, much of that energy is stored as starch in the endosperm. The reserve is meant for the next plant. After germination, before a young leaf can photosynthesize efficiently, the seedling draws on energy stored inside the grain. Humans learned to use the same compact storehouse. Digestible starch from barley is broken down into absorbable molecules, including glucose, which then enter the body's energy metabolism. The result is a chain that crosses species. Sunlight is captured by a plant, packaged into a seed, and partly recovered by a person as food. There is nothing supernatural about it, but it is remarkable. A dormant grain can hold both a plant's next opportunity to grow and a community's chance of making it through another season. Barley has another unusual use. It can become malt, and malt is a central ingredient in many beers. The first stage is malting. Barley is steeped in water and allowed to germinate under controlled conditions. Germination activates enzyme systems that prepare the grain to mobilize its reserves. Drying and kilning then stop further growth and produce malt. Brewing comes next. The malt is crushed and mixed with water at controlled temperatures. During mashing, enzymes convert part of the starch into sugars that yeast can use. After separation and boiling, the resulting wort is fermented. Yeast consumes fermentable sugars and produces ethanol, carbon dioxide, and many compounds that shape flavor. Beer is not simply barley left in water. It depends on a sequence of germination, enzymes, temperature control, and microbial fermentation. Humans borrowed biochemical tools that the seed evolved for its own offspring and turned them into a technology refined over thousands of years. Cultivation made food supplies more manageable. Surplus created a new set of questions. How much was harvested? Where was it stored? Who received it? Who kept the record? In ancient Mesopotamia, barley was a major crop. It could be measured, stored, distributed, brewed, and used in systems of labor rations. As settlements and institutions grew, administrators needed to track grain, livestock, labor, and exchange. Early clay tablets show that the development of writing was closely connected to such administrative demands. That does not mean barley invented writing. Writing emerged from a much richer technical and social setting. But sacks of grain that had to be counted made abstract marks extremely useful. Many early records concern quantities, goods, and distributions rather than poems or heroic tales. We often imagine civilization through palaces, wars, or great ideas. It was also built around ordinary problems, a meal, a storehouse, a ration, and an account that could not be wrong. Barley's trace survives in those everyday systems. As farming spread through migration, exchange, and trade, cultivated barley moved from Southwest Asia into many parts of Eurasia. It did not play the same role everywhere. Communities adapted it to new climates and new ways of living. In Europe, barley became deeply associated with malting and beer. In some cold, dry, or high-altitude regions, it also produced harvests where other staple crops were less reliable. On the Tibetan plateau, barley became part of a distinctive farming and food culture. Chinca usually refers to naked barley types adapted to the region. Their hulls separate relatively easily after threshing. The grain can be roasted, milled, cooked, and fermented. Chinca ties together highland soil, climate, everyday food, and festival traditions. The same crop can acquire very different technologies and meanings in different places. A seed's value is never only the calories it contains. It also lies in the ways people make it part of life. Barley did not disappear in the modern era. It is still used in food, animal feed, and brewing. Nutrition research has also renewed interest in this ancient cereal. Barley contains beta-glucan, a form of soluble dietary fiber. Research and some regulated food claims focus on specific conditions. Sufficient barley beta-glucan may help maintain normal blood cholesterol, and meals containing enough beta-glucan may reduce the rise in blood glucose after eating. Outcomes depend on dose, processing, the rest of the diet, and individual differences. Barley is therefore not a miracle food or a treatment for disease. It cannot replace a balanced diet, physical activity, or medical care. Its value is as a measurable source of dietary fiber, not as a universal solution. Another modern value lies in the field. Breeders are investigating drought tolerance, heat tolerance, disease resistance, and more efficient use of water and nutrients. A crop that once helped communities manage variable environments remains important in research on climate-resilient agriculture. The next time you see a glass of beer or a bag of barley food, remember that it belongs to a relationship stretching back more than 10,000 years. This is not only the story of a plant. It is the story of people observing nature, selecting seed, preserving harvests, and turning experience into technology and institutions. Civilization did not appear all at once, and no crop created it alone. It grew through countless choices: which seeds to save, where to sow, how to share food, and how to record what a community knew. Barley was one participant in that history. It accompanied the development of farming and villages, entered urban storehouses and accounts, and became food and culture in distant regions. Today, researchers still look to its genes, nutrients, and environmental flexibility for clues about the future. Perhaps a grain of barley stores more than starch and energy. It also carries traces of a long collaboration between people and land. Every harvest is another conversation with nature. And inside every grain is one small piece of civilization's beginning.